welcome. I'm Les Bubka, and you're listening to Accidental Podcast or something like that. My guest today is Don Came, the head instructor for Isakikai method in the UK. Hello, Don. How are you?
I'm good, Les. Thank you. How are you?
I'm very good, thank you. Could you tell us some background on your martial art experience? Where did you start it, and how did you end up in karate?
Yeah, sure. I started when I was 13, which was 1976. The martial arts craze at the time, was with a lot of people, was Bruce Lee movies, Enter the Dragon. And I was looking for something that I could do. And I found myself joining a taekwondo club initially. And I was with taekwondo for a number of years. I tried a few other bits and pieces as well. I would say it was more of a mishmash rather than mixed martial arts, certainly in the early days, so mishmash martial arts. I finally sort of settled with Wado, before finding a home with the Misakikai organisation and Vince Morris.
So, why Isakikai method? I know you told me that it's not a style, it's a method. Could you elaborate on that?
Yeah, it's an approach to training. At the end of the day, there's as many styles of martial art as there are people practicing martial arts. So it's about the approach to training. The ethos is to try and make training as functional as possible. So a lot of it is underpinned by what we refer to as the rules of combat, which has been written down by Vince. He brought out an excellent book. I highly recommend it for everybody's library. But it covers the basic principles, biomechanical principles, psychological principles that are involved in martial arts that help to make it a functional system.
Awesome.
So that's pretty much it.
Well, do you teach martial arts for a living, or you've got other job?
Combination. I do martial arts, and I also teach rehabilitative Pilates.
Oh, okay.
So I work at a clinical Pilates centre. It's run by a physio, and I do Pilates. So I do one-to-one. We were doing two-to-ones and classes there. I do all the classes online, like with everything else at the moment. But we've just gone back into doing one-to-ones, which is nice. You feel like you're benefiting people.
That's interesting. I would ask you about it if I knew.
Yeah. Well, no, I've been doing it for years. I actually got into Pilates because of an injury. I had a prolapsed disc in my back, and it put me out of action for quite a while, and I had to rehab. And I used Pilates as my primary rehab tool. And my back got better, so I stopped doing the Pilates, and I injured my back again. So I had to go through the whole process again, and then I did the same thing again, got better, stopped doing it, injured my back again, and then I realised actually I've got to keep on doing this, haven't I? So ever since then I've used it as part of my training program. So I've got balance. The Pilates actually is quite a really good discipline when it comes to understanding karate as well. There's quite a crossover within the two, and also so basically I combine things like do kettlebells for resistance training, body weight training, obviously the Pilates and the karate all blend together quite well.
So I think that's very interesting that people, I'm a personal trainer as well, and I've got the qualification with the corrective and postural assessment and corrective exercises. So I implement that a lot in my karate as well, and I think it's great stuff to be aware how your body works. And I think that a lot of instructors lacking simple anatomy and physiology.
Absolutely. But it's also because that's the boring bit for people, I think. My background is sport and exercise science. I did my degree in exercise science at Brighton University. And I did that because of my involvement in martial arts. So my martial arts has sort of inspired my education, and my education has inspired my martial arts.
Excellent.
Which is as it should be. So with uni, we did things like anatomy, physiology, psychology, physiology, philosophy.
I always ask my guests one question which is always featuring, others changing, but this one is always constant. So what impact has martial arts had or have on your mental health?
It's really important. Again, I think we've had discussions about this before, and ultimately everybody has experiences some sort of mental health issues throughout their lives, and it's important to have some sort of coping mechanism in place. And for me, certainly martial arts is that mechanism. It supplies a constant in an otherwise changing world. So it's a nice way to take yourself away from the stresses and strains of everyday life and focus on something different. It helps outside of the situation and maybe help you see it a little bit more clearly, and hopefully then be able to deal with it a little bit more. My own experience over the years is numerous times where things have happened that have created quite a dark space, and it's really helped me, along with family and friends. Martial arts has been very, very important in helping me stay afloat. Sometimes you coast, but eventually it gives you the strength to deal with the situations and to move on.
Excellent. I've seen the clip you posted on Facebook about you and the dyspraxia. Could you maybe explain a little bit about dyspraxia, what it is?
Yeah, I think the easiest way to think of dyspraxia is if you consider it to be physical dyslexia. So it's poor coordination. The signals aren't getting where they need to be. So, for example, as a child, my brain would tell me to walk. It would tell my legs to move. My legs wouldn't move, and I'd just fall over. This had a huge impact on it's not really something that they consider to be a sort of a mental development issue, but it can impact on your development of social skills. You feel clumsy, you feel awkward, you can be left feeling very, very different, which is something all kids go through anyway. But as I say, it gives you, creates issues with ability to socialize with groups, and I think that everybody needs to be able to learn how to interact, learn how to deal with people, how to just deal with the environment around them. I think that's yeah. So where I went with that the video was actually inspired by a link you put up. The guy explaining about his experience with dyslexia, and that encouraged me to put that out there, to be honest, because I know there's a lot of people who have issues with movement, and I think that martial arts is a great way to help create balance and awareness, this spatial awareness, this ability to just improve your overall awareness of what you're doing and what space you're in.
Yeah, that's what I was puzzled when you said that, because knowing you, I've seen how you move. I wouldn't guess that you had the problems with balance, coordination, and stuff like that. How much you would contribute that to karate training, or is it just that people just get on with their life and learn those skills through practice? And I don't know how it's treatable, the dyspraxia. I'm not the expert on the subject. So what are your thoughts about it?
Well, practice makes permanent, and the more practice you can do, obviously it does improve, it strengthens those neural pathways, makes you much more spatially aware. I think it was, for me, that was the challenge, and because it was such a solo challenge, you didn't have to rely on being part of a team for martial arts practice. It was very much what you did. Yes, you make comparisons with what other people are doing, which isn't necessarily a bad thing, because it gives you something to aim for. You're always looking, this is the whole point of the ranking system. You don't stand there as a white belt and look at a black belt and say, okay, I'm going to do that. And you actually look at the grades above you, look at what they're doing, and say, yes, I'm going to do that. And then you sort of work your way through the ranks. So I think that it's a very important, I think for me, it was the right choice. And I think for many people, it would be the right choice. I think it was probably a combination of things. I think it was the fact that I was developing physically anyway. I started martial arts practice at the right time, albeit by accident. So as I was developing physically, as I was maturing mentally, I think that went hand in hand with the martial arts practice and brought about a dramatic change. I think I said in the video, my wife would be the first one to point out that I still have my clumsy moments, and I do. In fact, yesterday I managed to smack my head on something that was actually well out of my range, but I still managed to hit my head on it. It's a miracle. This ability to hit my head on things, even when they're nowhere nearby. So yeah, I think I would say it's essential, and I think anyone who has issues with balance, whether they're sporting or not, you don't have to be sporting to get involved in martial arts. I think this is one of the things that appealed to me so much when I took it up, is that it has no relevance. Your sporting ability has no relevance on your martial arts training. Certainly there's a sporting element to martial arts, and I'm not saying you should ever do away with that. But I think that as a solo practice for developing spatial awareness, and therefore, improving your self-esteem, developing your confidence, because you're starting to do things you couldn't do before, it has a dramatic effect, not just on improving people's ability to move, improve their balance, improve their posture, but also improve their sense of self-awareness, their sense of self-worth, their confidence. Phenomenal practice. I'd say I'd like to see it compulsory in schools, but maybe that'd be a bit too extreme.
Yeah, I would like to see it as well. Tell me, what do you think about, I don't know, you're running a club or you're just doing the private sessions? At the moment, we all do the same, nearly. But within your club structure, how do you deal with the inclusion? So I'm sure you've got the different people with different abilities going into the club. What steps you're taking to make sure that they are all happy and their needs are met?
Well, I have a very small club. And we have a very specific way of training, which is not available to us at the moment because of the social distancing. It's pretty much all partner based from after the warm up side of things. Everything was partner based. So first of all, it has to be something that people want to do. If people want to do it, then we would do all we could to make them feel included and make it accessible to them. There are obvious limitations to that, depending on what the physical condition is, what the person's physical limitations are. But even then, we could, because it's partner based, we work at the level of the student. So you could have two people working together on a different skill level quite easily because they both work at their level. Providing the students are happy to have a degree of physical contact. Again, as we say, we can't do that at the moment, but hopefully it won't be too long before we can get back into our formal training. Then they can actually experience a very dramatic, very rapid improvement in not just their physical ability, their spatial awareness, but also in their confidence in dealing with people within a certain space. Okay, we all have our own little space, and our safety zone, our personal space is generally only open to people we invite in. If we make that unsafe contract with a training partner to allow somebody into that space, they have to be happy to do that. They have to be confident that the person wants the best for them, and they want to be working together. There has to be a signage between the people working together, and I think that then it's a very difficult thing. You know this as well as when people work close together, it's very intimidating. It's getting within somebody's personal space, particularly if you don't know them very well, if you've only just met them. That's a very difficult thing to do. And that makes making that initial bridge, that initial contact, is the biggest step we have to overcome in the way that we train. If people can make that step, then the whole thing just opens up. It really just blossoms out, and they can do a huge amount. They can learn a lot about themselves. They can learn about how they interact with other people. And another element, I think, is there has to be a crossover. Everything we do in our martial arts has an impact, or has a potential impact, on how we deal with everything else in our lives. We learn through going into the dojo and training with different people that you don't have to be best friends with everyone. You go in and you learn respect, you give respect, you earn respect, okay? But you are not just respecting the other person, respecting yourself. By learning how to use your body more efficiently, you're learning to respect your body as well.
Yeah.
And I think that we focus on the self-defense elements of our art hugely, and that's not wrong. It is a defensive system, but it's not all it is. It's about developing those social skills. It's about developing and improving on our physical and mental well-being. Through movement, through understanding movement. We all know what it's like on bad days. We feel quite clunky and quite stiff and quite immobile. But when we start to loosen everything up, we start to grease the grooves, as it were. Everything starts to become fluid. It starts to move more freely. It just starts to feel really, really nice. And any time we learn something new, we go back to being clunky again. And we work on the mechanics, and we have to really focus on working on mechanics. I think this is the first point. This is what starts to help people to separate what is going on in their everyday life to what goes on in the dojo, because we have to shut everything else out. We're working on quite challenging mechanical movements, but then we have to transcend the mechanics. So if you think about the mechanical process, we've got 4-move combination or 4-move sequence. So, for example, we break it down into its 4 component parts. So then we say, okay, I'm polishing each part of that technique, each part of that sequence, but then I have to bring it all back together again. So we're trying to create that fluidity, that connection. As Bruce Lee says in Enter the Dragon, don't think, feel. You have to work on developing a feel for the movement, feel the connections internally and externally. So when we make a contact with somebody, we are getting an external input, and that's going to again reflect on that internal sensation. And that that's mindfulness in training. That's what we're searching for in our training. We're trying to achieve this state of mindful awareness. We're trying to create this state of balance and symmetry in the body, in the way that we move. Don't forget, self-defense isn't just defending against somebody trying to cause you physical harm. We also have to consider the aspects of protecting ourselves from ourselves. So we've all got, particularly guys like ourselves who have been in martial arts for a number of years, and we've had some really, really bizarre training methodology enforced on us. We carry injuries from those days. Dodgy knees, hip, shoulders, all from the ways that we used to train, because I was too stupid to know any different. So I used to persevere with those things, even though I was actually doing myself physical harm. So I think with training, with teaching, with good teachers, you know, a teacher, a sensei, is somebody who's gone before. You know, we're almost like a scout, where we should be searching out the best practices and then filtering them down to the people that choose to train with us. Okay, and then they go on and they do the same thing. They go out and they search out these practices and they adopt the good practices. We're always looking to try and cut away the bad practices from what we do and refine what we do. If we're not getting any better. So we should constantly be looking to refine, not just movement, but teaching methods, and also say that the approach to the way that we train and the way that we study the art. Got a bit rambly there, didn't I?
Thank you. You just answered my question, because I was going to ask you about the methodology. Are you sticking to traditional, or are you searching for new ones? But you already said you're looking for new things. So I believe that you, just like me, you don't worry about discarding, getting rid of the unwanted stuff, like you said about the kibadachi and stuff like that, the horse stance. I completely get rid of it towards the open stance, the shikodachi, because it was just ruining my knees and ankles. And just it depends on my students. I just getting rid of the stances which are harmful to them.
I don't tend to use kibadachi, but I come from a Wado background and we don't really have that stance anyway. So we use the straddle stance, that shikodachi. But I think they all have their place. But the thing is, I think a lot of problems came about because of the increased emphasis on the athleticism of martial arts and how it looked as opposed to what its function was. You know, and if a stance isn't functional, if it's creating stress, excessive stress through the joints, if it's potentially damaging the joints, there's nothing functional in that. You know, so I think if we look at it historically, stances tended to be higher, shorter, not because of the age of the people demonstrating, but because that is the functional way to practice those stances. With the athleticism, longer, lower, deep stances became the norm, and the theatre, if you like, was born, and it became the mainstay of the martial arts because it looked good. Face it, it looks great. You watch somebody do a good competition kata, it's a beautiful thing to watch.
Indeed,
absolutely
yeah.
Stunning. But that doesn't necessarily mean that there's good function. Great to watch. It's like watching a good dancer, isn't it? You know, you can watch a mediocre dancer and it's okay. Watch a brilliant dancer and wow, they blow you away. Yeah, and I think the same thing can be said in martial arts. I think what's more important in martial arts is what isn't seen. It's not about what we see, it's about what we don't see. And it's those internal connections. So I think that's really important.
What are you thinking about? At least I can see the quite a big shift in recent years, that more people looking for the practical side of karate. Do you think we should look for the old interpretations of the kata, of the movements, or should we just stick to let's say identifying the problem and then using karate as it fits, or should we use karate to find the problem and then try to fix it? You see what I mean? I probably didn't describe it very well.
I think it's fantastic that there's this strong movement towards putting karate into a context, and that context being function. But function, how do you define functional karate? There's all sorts of elements involved in that. If we're talking about application, I follow the principle line of best. Okay, so when you're working an application, any application should be flexible enough to deal with a number of different types of interaction, types of attack.
Mm-hmm.
We will never know whether we are working on the original application. And to be honest, I don't think it's important. The important thing is it something that suits your body? Is it something that you can make work against a variety of different body types? And ultimately, you know, you've got to remember that all karate is be it kata or kion, is actually a relatively false construct. We're using kion and kata as a training platform, if you like. They're models, and they're there to help us to develop our awareness, develop our ability develop our connections in how we move. They're training vehicles. They're there to help us move more efficiently. Basically, you know, I think we're never going to know the original applications. That's not necessarily an issue. We need to make sure that what we do need to do, and I think this is where the move towards functional karate is a little bit of a double-edged sword. There's some really, really great stuff out there. There's some fantastic stuff and some really good people out there now and doing some really wonderful things. But there's still a lot of stuff done from, in my opinion, unrealistic ranges. You know, they'll start from a long front stance, or they start from too far away, or they'll assume a boxing guard. You know, things like that, which are sort of problematic at best. We need to understand that self-defense and match fighting are very different things, although there's a lot of skills that cross over. So our bunkai should take that into account. So when we analyze movements, be it kion or kata, we want to make sure that we are close enough to touch right from the outset. We want to make sure that we're moving to position of advantage, referring back to what we said about the rules of combat earlier on. And also that we are in a position to use as many of our defensive weapons as we possibly can. So if we follow those basic principles, there's a lot more to it than that. But obviously, on a simple level, don't be in front of the attacker. Be close enough to hit if you need to hit. Because if you're not close enough to hit or be hit, then you don't need to get involved.
Exactly.
Yeah, you don't need to be there. Remove yourself from the situation. It's only when it gets that close that the physical skills are the necessary ones. And generally, in self-defense, if we get to that point, it's because we've stuffed up somewhere else. So the self-defense skills need to be there, but an environment, you know, our self-defense training should include environmental awareness. It should include some sort of legal awareness of the possible implications of getting involved in a confrontation. And so all of these things have to be addressed, and also, you know, make it very clear to people. And I think this is something that particularly has come out of the advent of this move towards more applicable karate, if you like, is that people are starting to have a real respect for the techniques and the potential damage that a technique can do. So morally, ethically, karmically, if there is such a word, we find ourselves in a much better position to choose the right response rather than, you know, it's the reasonable force law is an ambiguous one at best. But if we can justify to ourselves that we've done what we need to do and no more, then we're in a reasonably solid position, I think.
Yeah, I think that you mentioned that training awareness, legal stuff. So I'm for my club years ago, I withdrawn the term self-defense. So I kind of don't teach self-defense because I don't teach much of awareness, legal stuff. Although we're moving in that direction and getting people to teach me, so I can teach that. But do you think that it's kind of misleading that the most of the karate groups using learn self-defense with us, and they actually don't teach self-defense? It's all kind of sports based imagination of self-defense.
Yeah, this is a big problem, isn't it? You know, we've all been subject to that over some point in time. I mean, remember when I first started doing martial arts, one of the things that I enjoyed the most was the sparring, the kumite side of things. Even though I wasn't particularly good at it, but being clumsy had its advantages.
Unpredictable.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I think but we were told it's for self-defense. It's for self. No, it wasn't. We were learning match fighting. It was nothing to do with self-defense. I don't like the term self-defense. Like yourself, I think it's actually a bit misleading. I think the term self-protection, personal protection, is more applicable. And I think also it covers a broader spectrum. It gives a better image of what we're trying to do overall. But again, it has to be directed at range. If I know, I had a conversation with a gentleman a few years back. We were sitting having a coffee, discussing martial arts, and he had a very, very successful dojo, or number of dojo, or something similar. And he was saying that his system, what he taught, was totally ineffective as a self-defense system. Great as a sport, but it wasn't suitable for self-defense. It wasn't taught as self-defense. Blah blah blah. Great. Okay. Following week, this same guy had posters up selling his art in his dojo. Come and learn self-defense.
Mm.
Yeah, and I think we need to be honest with the people we teach. So if I'm teaching a sport, I say I'm teaching a sport. If I say I'm teaching a system that involves elements of personal protection, I need to be able to justify that. I need to be able to give them a context. Okay? Because we're not just teaching people to punch and kick. You know, we're teaching people to care about themselves. We're teaching people to care about other people. You know, that's the bigger picture.
Don, let me a second. I just tell Anna because Anna, if she wants to come in, she can come in. I'm not sure if my wife's hearing me. A little one is crying. Try to get in here.
And that's fine. Do what you need to do. That's fine.
But it seems to be moved somewhere else now, crying somewhere else. Moving on to the next question. Changing the subject. Who was your biggest influencer in your travels through the karate realm?
It's a difficult question, isn't it?
It is, yeah.
I can actually honestly say that I've been influenced by everyone that I've trained with in one way or another. You know, some influences have been more positive than others. And I don't really want to start listing names, because if I list a lot of names, I'm going to miss people out. Okay. And then I don't want to offend anyone by missing them out. I've trained with some really good people. I've learned a lot from all sorts of people, all sorts of grades, and from all sorts of disciplines. But if I was to just pick two names out, first of all, I'd say Vince Morris. Phenomenal. A great friend, been my mentor for many, many years now, and just phenomenally good guy and great martial artist. The other person I would pick out as being a major influence is a gentleman called Steve Rowe. He runs the Shikon and organization. He turned me on to Wado in the early days of my training. And also I still managed to train with him occasionally, and I did my Tai Chi with Steve. Phenomenal martial artists, both of them absolutely incredible martial artists. They're almost like flip sides of the same coin to me. But yeah, certainly biggest influences, Vince, as I say, great martial artist, but also really a good friend and mentor for many years. Steve Rowe, I've known for over 30 years as well now. And they continue to be the main influences, I think.
What are your future plans? I know now I know you teach a lot of seminars and stuff like that. Now we've got the pandemic, but after pandemic, what's the future holds for you?
Well, irrespective of what happens with the pandemic, for me, I want to continue to learn. I want to continue to improve. And in whatever format it is, I would really like to be able to continue to share what I discover with as many people as I can. You know, there's a lot of like-minded people in the martial arts now. And as I say, meeting and training people like yourself, with Ian, definitely I think it's worth meeting really inspirational people like Paul and Michelle Enfield. There's some fantastic people. Chris Denwood, and again, this is why I didn't want to get into naming names, because there's so many names, and I don't want to miss people out because I don't want to offend anybody, but also it's impossible to say all those influences. But I want to be able to keep on sharing that information. I love martial arts. I love training in martial arts. I love learning, and I love sharing that information out, particularly now that people are more open and more accessible in certain fields. So some of the old dogma still raises its ugly head from time to time. We've seen that again on courses and seminars where people will come on seminars, but they can't let their instructors know they're on a seminar, and which is really sad. I think that's unfortunate. And hopefully that we'll see that change. People will become more connected. I think if with this lockdown, this lack of contact, this social distancing, I think it's made people start to appreciate just how important what we do is, and how important that social interaction is, not just for physical health, but also for mental health.
I know you're running some online courses as well. I've seen on your website. Yeah. Can you tell us where to find you, where people can find more about Misakikai and yourselves?
Absolutely. My website is doncame.com. Everything's got Don Came in it. My YouTube channel is Don Came Applied Karate. On Facebook, I've got Don Came Karate Academy Eastbourne. Also, I've just set up, and then we'll be adding more content to it as time goes by, a training platform on Thinkific, and that's doncame.thinkific.com. So there's all sorts of material there. I'm going to be doing a series of short videos as well, sort of coaching videos, just 2-3 minutes, and I'll be putting those out via YouTube and social media over the coming months. So yeah, watch this space. Hopefully it's something that people will like, and if they like it, by all means get in touch and we can see how far we can take it.
Don, it was a pleasure to have you. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, and thank you for your perseverance with all the tech issues we've had.